And incoming, we've got more slavery apologetics. This is not slavery in the way we often picture it. These foreigners were not to be stolen and sold into slavery, which was punishable by death, nor were they to be mistreated by the Israelites. And again, this is just factually incorrect. I can tell you haven't read the book. The chapter that you're referring to is Exodus 21, verse 16, and Leviticus 25. And if you read Leviticus 25, there are two explicit rules for Hebrews and rules for foreigners. And you can treat foreigners harshly in opposition to how you can treat your Hebrew slaves. Let's read that. If you start reading in verse 42, it's still talking about Hebrew servants or slaves. We're going to call them servants because they actually get to go free. It says, "For they are my servants, whom I freed from the land of Egypt. They may not give themselves over into servitude. You shall not rule over him ruthlessly. You shall fear your God. Such male and female slaves as you may have, it is from the nations around you that you may acquire male and female slaves. You may also buy them from among the children of aliens residing among you, or from their families that are among you, who they begot in your land. These shall become your property. You may keep them as a possession for your children after you, for them to inherit as property for all time. Such you may treat as slaves, but as for your fellow Israelite kinsmen, no one shall rule ruthlessly over the other." So there you have it. You can rule over these foreigners ruthlessly. You can treat them as though they are actual slaves, in contrast to what Leviticus 25 is saying to do to your brethren. Do not reduce your brethren to slaves. Do not reduce your brethren to abject poverty and servitude. Do not treat your brethren harshly. However, these are the slaves you can have. Of these you can treat harshly. Now, about the nonsense claim about not being able to kidnap these people, no one's actually suggesting that the Israelites went to foreign lands and kidnapped these people. But again, if you bothered to read the book, you would discover that this is actually not a problem for Yahweh. In fact, he tells you that you can do it in Deuteronomy 20 and 21. Let's read that. In Deuteronomy 21, starting in verse 10, these are the commands that God gives to his people. "When you approach a town to attack it, you shall offer it terms of peace. If it responds peacefully and lets you in, all of the people present there shall serve you as forced labor. If it does not surrender to you, but would join battle with you, then you will lay siege to it. And when the Lord your God delivers it into your hand, you shall put all of its males to the sword. You may, however, take as your booty the women, the children, the livestock, and everything in the town, all of its spoil, and enjoy the use of the spoil of your enemy, which the Lord your God has given to you." So you can take foreigners as spoils of war. That's not a problem at all. And this is not like they attacked Israel. These are lands far away from them, lands that they are going to attack. And so God is not above kidnapping people. So what does Exodus 21:16 actually say? Well, Exodus 21:16 is about kidnapping free Israelite, free Hebrew people and turning them into slaves. The entire context of that chapter, of chapter 21 of Exodus, the whole chapter addresses Hebrews. The entire chapter is about Hebrew people. So when it says that you cannot kidnap a person and hold them as a slave or sell them as a slave, because that would be punishable by death, it's because that's your fellow Hebrew. But you had different rules for foreigners. If God is okay with you just executing foreigners, especially if they're Canaanites, then obviously he doesn't have a problem with you mistreating a foreign slave. And lastly, I would point out that Leviticus 25 makes no mention of how the slaves became slaves. It just says you can go and you can acquire them. It doesn't say you can only acquire the ones that you know fell into slavery through righteous means, or you can go and acquire somebody, but make sure you verify that they weren't kidnapped first. It doesn't say anything like that. It says you can go and you can acquire them. In fact, you can acquire their children as well. Do you think children born into slavery were acquired appropriately? Do you think that they had the autonomy to choose? Of course not. Children do not have the ability to give consent. Any child that is taken in slavery is in fact a slave that is kidnapped.